The emergence of Judaism is, I believe, the greatest story the world has ever known, though it could be said that I'm a tad biased. It began with the magnanimous Abraham and Sarah. They were succeeded by the embodiment of self-sacrifice, their son Isaac. Isaac and Rebekah's son Jacob would figuratively wrestle with his brother and his uncle, then literally, according to some interpretations, wrestle with God himself. Who would that torch of greatness be passed off to? Go, 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 Joseph! Joseph from the Bible is an interesting character. One of 12 brothers, he had a complicated role in the family that led to one of the worst bouts of sibling bullying ever recorded, and ended with a plot twist so surprising that, like most plot twists, it was arguably best captured in a Broadway musical.
I look handsome, I look smart, I am a walking work of art.
But where the forefathers and foremothers were essential for establishing the character and covenant of the religion, Joseph would set the dynamic for how Jews would not only relate to each other, but also to the rest of the world, and specifically become a role model for how to live in the diaspora. Jacob really loved his second wife, Rachel. He worked 14 years to earn her hand in marriage after her father pulled a switcheroo at the huppah that gave new meaning to the term family rom-com. Compared to her sister Leah, who had 6 sons, Rachel was sad that she was only able to bear 2 before dying. Many of the matriarchs struggled with childbirth. So of course, Joseph and Benjamin were particularly dear to Jacob. The brothers from the other mothers, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, weren't so happy about that. The Bible describes Joseph as super attractive, which I'm sure didn't help with the brothers' jealousy. To add fuel to the favoritism fire, Jacob gave him this really incredible code. Imagine if Gucci, Armani, and Vera Wang collaborated on making a colorful stained glass window into a jacket. Or it could have been tie-dye. Comment below and let us know. But then to top it all off, one day Joseph foresaw, via prophetic dream sequence, that eventually all his brothers would bow down to him. Mildly uncool. But when he went on to suggest that even Dad would be bowing down too, it's at that point the brothers decided that Joseph's entitlement had crossed into the boundaries of possible usurper. Remember what a problem their Uncle Esau had been, not to mention Granduncle Ishmael? According to some commentaries from the Midrash, the brothers even held a trial for Joseph and found him liable for the death penalty. They were ready to do it too, but the eldest brother Reuben protested that they were going too far. Judah, though not the oldest, had stepped up as leader. Spoiler alert, Jewish kings descend from Judah, so this is kind of foreshadowing. He called an audible in the plan and decided to sell Joseph into slavery instead. Small mercies. The brothers took Joseph's coat, dipped it in some blood, and told their dad that their younger brother had been eaten by a wild animal. Joseph was brought from the land of Israel, then known as the land of Canaan, to Egypt, where he ended up being a slave to one of the king's highest officials. He quickly rose to the top and soon ran the entire household, but that being charming and attractive thing kinda backfired on Joseph when the nobleman's wife got all fatal attraction on him. When he declined her advances, she essentially accused him of rape and sent Joseph to an Egyptian prison. But somehow, even there, he rose to a respected position. And when I say somehow, I mean God was looking out for him. He basically became Andy Dufresne in Shawshank, but more powerful. After about a decade of prison labor, Joseph met 2 new inmates. One was Pharaoh's bread maker, and the other his wine butler. Long story short, if your job is to serve the king when he gets drunk and carbs out, you're asking for trouble. One night, both prisoners each had a dream. Joseph, who had some experience interpreting dreams in the past, his own, unraveled the cryptic symbolism and foretold their futures with both clarity and sensitivity. Basically, it went like this. Wine guy, you're out in 3 days. Bread guy, do you have life insurance? You don't have some? Get some. Sure enough, in 3 days, the wine servant was released and the bread guy was hanged. Overjoyed, the wine servant promised to tell Pharaoh about Joseph's abilities, but much like canceling your Apple Music trial or buying toilet paper at the store, it kinda just slipped his mind for 2 years. But one night, Pharaoh had an unusual dream himself. With skinny cows eating fat cows and withered stalks of grain swallowing healthy ones, Pharaoh's dream was more confusing than something out of a David Lynch dream sequence. None of the royal advisors could make sense of it. Pharaoh's dream, that is, not season 3 of Twin Peaks. But that's when Pharaoh's wine guy had that, wasn't I supposed to do something, was it 24 months ago moment? He finally remembered to tell his boss and monarch that there was this guy in prison who was spot on when it came to interpreting dreams. So, Pharaoh summoned Joseph, who for the first time in over a decade was shaved, bathed, dressed, and presented to Pharaoh in sleek, slick, and sporty fashion. Our hero relayed to the troubled monarch that his visions foretold that Egypt was going to have 7 years of prosperity, followed by 7 years of famine. If he wanted Egypt to survive, he was gonna need someone to make sure the country was careful during the good years. Impressed, Pharaoh asked, "You want the job?" Overnight, Joseph went from incarcerated slave to second in command over all of Egypt. There's rags to riches, and there's emaciated to empowered. Over the next several years, the famine didn't just hit Egypt, but the entire region. However, because of Joseph's guidance, Egypt transitioned from simply a rich nation into the sole superpower of the world. Things were good. Meanwhile, back in the land of Canaan, Jacob and his sons were running out of food. They realized they were going to need to take a trip to Egypt to survive, so 10 brothers departed on the journey. Only 10, because Jacob dared not risk losing Benjamin as well, his only other son from Rachel. The brothers came to the realization that selling Joseph over a decade ago wasn't such a good thing to do, and according to the rabbinic commentator Rashi, they decided, while in Egypt, that they were going to try to find him. But they were looking for a slave, not the vice pharaoh of Egypt. So when the brothers approached Joseph, they couldn't even fathom that the regal statesman might actually be their long-lost brother. Joseph ultimately wanted reconciliation with his brothers, but he also needed to know that they weren't still the sibling-selling slanderers of his angsty teen years. So he decided to test them, for educational purposes, of course. First, he accused them of being spies. Freaked out and desperate, the brothers relayed that they were simply travelers from Canaan getting food for themselves, their father, and their younger brother. Joseph stopped them in their tracks and demanded that he see this elusive brother. Wondering what that had to do with the price of tea in China, they tried to level with the power-abusing official, but Joseph wouldn't speak with them any further. Instead, he proceeded to take the second oldest brother, Simon, hostage, demanding instead that they return home to retrieve Benjamin. Oddly enough, despite the accusations of espionage, they were sent home with full bags of food and their freedom. Save for Simon, of course. Utterly perplexed, the brothers went home to Jacob and tried to explain the bizarre turn of events, informing him that they needed to bring Benjamin to Egypt. Needless to say, this did not go over well with Dad. They even delayed the journey for quite some time, but when the food ran out again, they knew they had no other choice. Judah, still the leader of the brothers, swore to their concerned father that he would return Benjamin back home. Still reluctant, Jacob agreed to trust Judah, and the brothers headed back to Egypt. Upon their return, the brothers gear up for a confrontation. To their surprise, Joseph greeted them with a banquet and amazed them by sitting each of them according to their exact birth order. After a delightful meal, Joseph let everyone return home. But that's when a silver goblet went missing. Joseph cried foul, but having orchestrated this drama in secret, he searched each brother one by one, once again, from oldest to youngest. Finally, the guards found the wine goblet in Benjamin's bag. Joseph consequently decreed that Benjamin would forever be a slave, but the other brothers could return home, scot-free. This elaborate masterminding was designed to place the brothers in an ironic situation that was nearly identical to when they sold Joseph all those years ago. But the brothers rose to the challenge, Judah in particular, insisting that they would not leave without Benjamin because if they did, they would kill their father. With Judah's unwavering defense of his brother, Joseph finally recognized his siblings had changed and rectified the character flaws of their youth. It's at this point that Joseph broke down, revealing that he was their younger brother. With a tearful reconciliation, Joseph welcomed his brothers to live in the land of Egypt and also sent for their father and the rest of the family. In a few short generations, Jacob's family would increase from about 70, 12 sons had quite a few kids, to an entire nation. But as the final moments of the first book of the Bible conclude, Jacob gives a blessing on his deathbed to each of the brothers. But even before he does that, a fascinating and peculiar moment transpires with Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. The two boys, the first of the new generation that grew up in the land of Egypt, knelt down before the bedside of their dying grandfather. Jacob switched his hands, putting his right hand on Ephraim, the second-born, and his left hand on Manasseh, the first. Joseph tried to correct his father. When making a blessing, the right hand is usually favored, but Jacob reassured his son that he knew what he was doing. He purposely gave the birthright blessing to Joseph's second-born son. The two grandsons accepted Jacob's blessing, and even Manasseh seemed to have no problem with being given the second-born's honor. Now, that may not seem like much, but you have to go back to the beginning of the Bible to see that virtually every previous generation had devastating conflicts over the second-born receiving the blessing due to the first. There was Cain, firstborn, and Abel, Ishmael, the firstborn, and Isaac, Esau, the firstborn, and Jacob, and the 10 brothers were all older than Joseph. With Manasseh's acceptance of Ephraim's honor, he righted a long-standing and persistent generational problem. And when he did this, both he and his brother were elevated to the level of the older generation, as they would each be recognized as a tribe of Israel from here on out. Ephraim and Manasseh restored a unity of brotherhood that could only have happened because of Joseph's tribulations and his rectification of the conflict he had with his brothers. This new type of unity and brotherly love will be essential to the nation's survival, as they will soon endure the hardship of Egyptian slavery over the next 200 years, an event we recall every year at Passover. As the nation of slaves becomes the Jewish people at Mount Sinai and beyond, they begin to recognize that a person's character and behavior is more important than just their birth order. Focusing on connecting to God and striving for merit instead of honor, the Jewish people learn humility and purpose. To think, none of this would have happened had 10 brothers not sold their good-looking brother with a stylish coat into slavery, learning an important lesson and setting an example for generations to follow. Thank you everyone for watching. If you like this video and you want to see more of our stuff, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so that you'll know first when we upload new videos.